Good morning, everyone. Kunal here again with yet another video on the Raptor series. And today we have chosen to build a basic pattern printing program. There have been some queries from my students that I should build a small program to demonstrate how to print patterns. Now, printing patterns is one way where you can, build your programming logic. So it's good for beginners. All right. So for today's video, what we have chosen is to print this pattern, and as usual, we will be using Raptor. Now, if you can see and try to analyze this pattern, you can see that uh, there are stars being printed on subsequent rows, and the number of star being printed corresponds to the row number. So what I mean basically is that row number 1 will have 1 star, row number 2 will have 2 stars, row number 3 3 stars, and so on and so forth. So the row number and the number of stars are equal, and we will be using a concept of nested loop to print this kind of a pattern. A nested loop is basically a loop within a loop, and the reason we need two loops to print this kind of a pattern is because if the first loop represents the row, the second loop will represent the column. So we'll need two loops, one nested within the first loop or the main loop. And let's go about it. Obviously, we don't need any input here. We'll start with the loop. But before we do anything, of course, because we are using Raptor, we'll have to initialize a variable to use as a condition for entering or exiting the loop. The variable I choose is I. I will begin with setting I equal to 1 because in Raptor we start with 1, we don't start with 0. Usually when you are in doing some programmings or you're using a programming language like C or Java or Python, you will initialize from 0, but here we start with 1. All right. Let's say I want to print 5 rows. So I'll make I greater than 5 here, so that as soon as I becomes greater than 5, it will exit the loop, which means this loop will iterate exactly for 5 times. And of course, I'll have to increment also. So I will be I plus 1. Every time the loop iterates, I is incremented by 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As soon as it becomes greater than 5, as soon as I becomes 6, it exits the loop. So cool. I have created a loop, and I have used a variable I to represent my rows, but now I will need another loop to represent my columns. And so I will select a loop again, and this is going to be a very easy program. It's a short video. So this is the second loop for the columns now, and I will use another variable, let's say j, begin from 1 to represent the columns, and I want to, now this is very important, I want to run this loop till j becomes equal to I. As you can see, I have put a condition here, j greater than I. As soon as j becomes greater than I, it will exit the loop. And of course, j is incremented here. J is j plus 1. So I have my loops ready. So j will iterate for 2 times if I is 2. So for the second row, j will iterate for 2 times. J will iterate for 5 times if I is 5. So for the fifth row, j will iterate for 5 times. And this is the logic basically behind it. And that is how we will restrict the number of iterations of j till it reaches the value of I. Basically, meaning as soon as j becomes I and greater than I, it exits the loop, increments I, and starts all over again. So amazing. So we've done this. Now all that needs to be done is to print the star. So I will select output box and I will print star with a space, and I will remove the end current line selection here in the checkbox so that it prints the star in a continuous line. So I have done that also. So the stars get printed, but then it will print continuously in a single line. I don't want to do that. For each new row, I want a new line to be printed. And to do that in Raptor, for a new line, I will use the empty double quotes with this end current line checkbox. Uh, keep it selected so that each time I iterates, a new row begins. And that's it. This program is over. You can see it in action if you want to. So let's go on and see how it works. And there you are. This pattern gets printed. So 5 times it gets printed. To understand exactly what is happening, let's go line by line. Let me make a little change. Let's not go till 3. Let's go 5. Let's go till 3. Reduce the number of stars. For line by line editing in Raptor, you can use the symbol here. So this is basically debugging the flowchart line by line. So let's begin. Start, I is 1, loop, I is obviously less than 3 because began with 1. So j is initialized to 1. The loop begins. J is not greater than I. Actually, j is exactly equal to I. So it should go inside the loop, and here it prints the star. You can see I is 1, j is 1 on your left hand side panel. And now j is incremented. Again, the j condition is checked. Now j is greater than I because I was 1 and j becomes 2. So should exit the loop. It does. The output with the empty uh, the empty quotation marks. So basically a new row should begin here. I is incremented to 2 and you can see I is 2. And now the loop runs again. See, I is 2, which is less than 3. So it should go inside the I condition. J becomes 1 again, and you can see the change here. J is 1 and I is 2. So it should print 2 stars, which it does, and then exits. Again, I is incremented. I becomes 3. J becomes 1. Now it should print 3 stars. It does that. Again, a new row begins. Now I is 4, which is obviously greater than 3. So the program ends. And this is the output we get. So I hope you understood. Study this full flowchart well. Try to build it. This is one way of developing your programming logic. We will be doing more complex pattern printing moving forward. Do a couple of videos on how complex patterns can be printed, what's the logic behind it, and how can you, uh, build uh, complex patterns or print complex patterns using Raptor. So stay tuned, guys. Thank you for watching.